Thanks, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, I'm the Managing Director of Freshleaf Analytics. Our work in the industry encompasses detailed market intelligence reports, custom research, market analysis, and of course, strategy development for the medicinal cannabis industry. We work with medicinal cannabis companies, pharmaceutical and consumer goods organisations, government, and we also work with companies who are looking to assess investment opportunities in the market. Moving on to the next slide, twice a year, Freshleaf Analytics releases a free industry report on the state of the medicinal cannabis industry in Australia. And today I'm going to share with you some of the key highlights from our most recent report, which is our first half report for 2021. It contains data on patient, product and pricing in the industry, and that data is derived from proprietary Freshleaf models, data from the Therapeutic Goods Administration, from product companies, and also from an anonymised real-world patient data. For those of you who are wanting to read the report in detail, it is available on our website, which is freshleafanalytics.com.au. So we'll get into it. I'm pleased to say that the medicinal cannabis industry continues to experience very robust market growth. Product revenue in 2020 closed at just over 100 million, and that was up from 30 million in the previous year. So really significant growth year on year. We closed 2020 with around 30,000 active patients. And so they're patients who have filled a prescription or seen a doctor for medicinal cannabis in the past month. Now, this is a significant jump up from 2019, where the year ended with 10,000 active patients. Now, turning our focus to 2021, there are currently around 55,000 active patients in the market, and we're estimating that we'll finish the year at between 75 to 85,000 active patients. Now, it's worth noting that at the start of 2019, there were just 3,000 active patients. So we've seen a growth factor of over 15 times in just 2 years. In terms of product revenue, we are expecting that 2021 will bring a milestone for us, and that we'll see over 200 million in product revenue by the end of this year. And in fact, year-to-date sales have already well surpassed the total year sales for 2019. Now, in terms of indicators of market growth, for those of you who aren't familiar with the industry, moving on to the next slide, the two key indicators to keep an eye on are what we call SASB and authorised prescriber. And both of these indicators have hit record numbers in 2021. Now, SASB represents the number of per patient approvals for prescriptions in Australia, while authorised prescriber represents the number of doctors who have authorisation to prescribe medicinal cannabis products without needing to get a per patient approval. So we've seen, starting with SASB, we've seen some volatility in the SASB numbers this year, and we've seen two very big spikes, one in March and one in May. And both of those months we hit almost 10,000 approvals. To put that number into context for you, the previous 12-month average was 5,000 approvals per month. So they were really significant spikes. Now, there's a couple of factors that are driving the volatility that you can see in the graph that's on the left-hand side of the page. Some of these are signalling what we believe is genuine underlying market growth, while there are some others that have artificially raised approvals. So, for example, there was a flower shortage that the industry experienced earlier this year, which required doctors to submit a number of approvals for a single patient or a single prescription. And so industry observers are going to be watching that SASB number very, very closely over the next couple of months to see where it settles and to see what it tells us about the true growth trajectory of the industry. Now, looking at the number of authorised prescribers, this is a really fascinating and significant story. You can see that the number of authorised prescribers was low and stagnant for quite a long period of time, but recently this has started to gain momentum. So we hit 263 authorised prescribers in May. That's up from 179 from in December, and just 29 authorised prescribers in the year prior to that, so December 2019. And the reason that it's a really important metric for the industry is because authorised prescribers typically prescribe in very high volumes. And in fact, we estimate that they now prescribe medicinal cannabis for around 1 in 5 patients. So while the SASB or special access pathway remains a primary channel for patients who are seeking access to medicinal cannabis, the authorised prescriber pathway is going to be a significant contributor for future growth and future patient numbers. Now, moving on to the next slide. This slide shows the number of products that are available in Australia for doctors to choose from to prescribe for patients. And Australia has become a highly commoditised market. There are now around 190 products on the market for doctors to choose from, and the products keep coming. So what you'll see from the graph here is that the number of products available has roughly doubled each year since 2018. It's really difficult to think of an industry that has so many companies that are vying for a piece of what is still a relatively small, although be it fast-growing pie. In terms of product formats, the growth has primarily come from oil, although we did see some modest growth from the number of flower products, obviously prior to the flower shortage. Together, oil and flower comprise over 80% of the products that are available, and so they very much still do dominate the industry. They're traditional formats that dominate the industry still today. Now, while the number of products available is fantastic for doctor and patient choice, it also comes with great challenges. Because the industry is highly commoditised, it's difficult for physicians to differentiate between products beyond price and formulation. And so meaningful differentiation in the product space, but also in customer experience more broadly, remains an issue for the industry. As you can imagine, moving on to the next slide, you can see that in an environment of intense competition and record product numbers, the price is continuing to drop, and we've seen steady price declines over the last couple of years. 2021 has brought a substantial drop in the retail floor price, so the cheapest product on the market from a retail price perspective, and it's now 3 cents per milligram of cannabinoid. Now, this is half of what the floor price was towards the end of 2020, where it was 6 cents per milligram. So we can see that the price is dropping very quickly. I do want to point out, though, that just because there are cheaper products available on the market, it doesn't mean that patients are being prescribed those products or that those products are yet widely available. And at the moment, only around 1 in 5 products on the market has a retail floor price that sits below that 10 cents per milligram mark. And we have freshly anecdotally heard reports that there are a number of low price products in the market that are failing to gain traction. And the same thing is happening with delivery format innovation, where new delivery formats have not yet reached critical mass. So simply put, just putting a cheap product in the market or a new delivery format in the market is not a guarantee for success. And there's a variety of reasons for this. So doctors may be concerned about quality of the products or about efficacy. Many doctors do stick with their tried and tested, particularly with new delivery formats, where they often ask for they have a higher asking price. So doctors, if they're not familiar with them, feel that that might be a bit more of a risk, particularly in an industry where patients are, paying quite a lot of money for the medication. Organisations, company players or industry players might have budgets that restrict things like doctor education and engagement. So as you can imagine, doctors are busy people. Having to stay abreast of 190 different products and keep track of what's coming into the market is no easy task for them. And outside of that, we might see with delivery formats that they don't allow the kind of flexibility that doctors are used to having with products like oil. So all of this contributes to patients feeling that the products in the market are still too expensive, and we do expect that we'll see the average price of products continue to drop, as well as that floor price in the future. Now, on to patient spend. So patients at the moment are spending on average $359 a month, and you can see here that patient spend has remained relatively flat over the past 3 years. In terms of the average daily dose, patients are taking about 87 milligrams a day of their medication, and over 3/4 of patients are actually on a dose that's less than 100 milligrams a day. And moving on to the next slide, this is an important statistic to take note of in terms of where the market is at the moment. And the reason for that is that the TGA downscheduled low dose CBD from Schedule 4, where it's prescription only, to Schedule 3, where you can go into a pharmacy, talk to the pharmacist and get a low dose CBD product over the counter. Although I will point out that there are no products yet on the market. Companies have plans underway for doing the clinical research that's required to demonstrate quality, safety and efficacy, and to get those applications into the TGA for registration on the ARTG. Now, almost a quarter of medicinal cannabis patients are currently taking a low-dose CBD product. They're spending about $8 a day. And we're expecting that that patient cohort will migrate to the pharmacy channel once low-dose CBD products become available. So that's over sort of 10,000 patients who are currently spending about 30 million a year. And so our belief is that the companies who are able to be the first to get to the S3 market will be the ones that take the lion's share of that group. Because people will naturally be reluctant to go to a doctor and get a prescription for a product that they can easily access over the counter in pharmacies. And interestingly, within the industry, we have begun to see a sort of evidence of shuffling in low-dose CBD products as the market readies itself. And that's taken the form of companies entering the industry, as well as products and manufacturers choosing to exit the industry. And the reasons for that could be that they have products at the moment that sit in that S3 profile but aren't suitable for S3. They might not have the right delivery format, for example. They might not meet the manufacturing requirements for registering a product. And so companies may be choosing not to invest in further clinical research required to demonstrate the sort of efficacy of these products, where there's concerns about whether the maximum daily dose of 150 milligrams a day will in fact be effective. So we'll expect to see that some of these companies will shift their focus elsewhere and may introduce either more suitable S3 Schedule 3 formulations or move away from low-dose CBD altogether. And to wrap up, in terms of what we see lies ahead for the industry, we are expecting further industry consolidation as a result of price decreases and companies whose business models may not have built those price decreases into consideration when they set their operations up a few years ago. We're expecting changes in the regulatory landscape as well as the product and pricing landscape. And I can see that my time is up, Tim, so I'm going to wind it up there and leave it for questions later.
Thanks, Sandra. We do have some questions. In terms of being an authorised prescriber, what does a doctor have to be an authorised prescriber if they're prescribing authorised products? I mean, it seems to be an additional layer of regulatory overkill, if you like.
So the authorised prescriber channel was set up for doctors who want to do or are doing high volumes of prescriptions. At the moment, the products are unregistered, and so the SASB system was put in place for the individual patient approvals, which means that TGA can keep a pretty close eye on what products are getting approved for which type of patients and for what sort of indications. So really that will remain a primary pathway until we get to a point where there's more GPs or more specialists who are prescribing high volumes.
And there's a question here, how are prescribers determining the dosage of cannabis products needed?
So that will come down to their clinical assessment and the patient's condition and what they believe is required. Typically, doctors use what's called a start low, go slow, and so they'll go for a lower dosage and then titrate up depending on how a patient is responding to their medication.
And what are they prescribing products for? Is it for sleep apnea and all those sort of things?
So primarily for pain, we see certainly a lot of patients coming through for different types of pain. Patients are also looking at stress and anxiety. Of course, there's epilepsy, rare forms of childhood epilepsy. Epidiolex is a product that has been registered on the ARTG and is approved for that. We have Sativex, which is also registered, which is for multiple sclerosis. So they're the sorts of indications that we're seeing patients prescribed medicinal cannabis for.
And where is Australia in this kind of global landscape? Where are we positioned in terms of our development in this space?
So Australia is quite a unique market in that we've taken a pharmaceutical approach to medicinal cannabis. We are highly regulated. We are very focused on getting quality and products to patients that will be effective. We are different to places like Canada and the US, for example, where you might be able to, sort of access CBD products much more readily. But I believe we've taken a much more sort of medically and more patient sort of centered approach and more responsible approach in Australia than elsewhere.
And where's Big Pharma positioned in this? Obviously, we've got some companies presenting in a moment. Is this a space Big Pharma are entering into globally?
So we haven't seen a lot of overt evidence yet of Big Pharma, although we are seeing some movements in the market. So you may have heard about the recent acquisition of GW Pharma by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. That was for 7.2 billion. GW Pharma are the companies that registered and manufacture Epidiolex and Sativex. And so with that sort of transaction and also obviously the market potential, we are expecting that Big Pharma will come on board in the future, but not in such a big way just yet.